Is the issue that you can't carry? Is the issue the embryo quality? Is the issue your husband and not you? Because we always assume that the problem is the woman when it's 50% male factor infertility. And these fertility clinics love to start the screening on the women first before they go to the husbands, because oftentimes it is more money for them in their pocket. A male's screening is a couple $100, $1,000 at best. A woman's screening is thousands of dollars.
Hey guys, welcome back to Vaginally Speaking. This is Allison Germanson. Today's episode, we're diving into one of the most personal and often misunderstood areas of womanhood, fertility in modern family building. Whether you've thought about egg donation, surrogacy, or simply what it means to take control of your reproductive choices, this conversation is really going to open your eyes. My guest today is Eloise Drane, the founder and CEO of Family Inceptions and Fertility 360, and the host of the Fertility Cafe podcast. Eloise has spent over 2 decades helping people navigate the world of surrogacy, egg donation, and all the complex and beautiful paths to parenthood. What makes her story so powerful is that she's lived it herself. She's been a 6-time egg donor and a 3-time surrogate. Her perspective is a blend of lived experience, deep expertise, and a whole lot of heart. We're going to talk about what it really looks like to build a family in today's world, the emotional side of third-party reproduction, and how women can find empowerment and integrity in these choices. So let's jump in. Eloise, welcome to Vaginally Speaking.
Thank you, Allison, for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Can you just start off with your story? I know that there's lots of different parts to your story of, what you've been, what led you to open, but what led you to be an egg donor and a surrogate.
Sure. So my story actually started, I know I'm dating myself here, but it started in 98. I was a kidney donor.
Okay.
And after I donated a kidney to my cousin, I went to visit him in California, and his sister and I, we were at the mall. And while I was waiting for her at a store, there were still, newspapers that you could actually read. And I was flipping through the newspaper, and on the back was classified ads, and there was a ad about egg donation. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I had never heard about it before. And so when my cousin came out, I asked her, I was like, would you ever do this? She was like, absolutely not. Could never be something that I could do. Okay. And, I just figured that it would be something that would be intriguing, and it kind of kept it in the back of my mind. Fast forward over a year later, something was just like, let me call that company and see if I could ever be an egg donor. And I did. It was a company out of California. I asked them if I could be a donor, and they told me yes, that I would be a good candidate, but Black women didn't have fertility issues, and it would probably be very unexpected if I got matched. I was like, oh, okay. But, I didn't know any different because, again, now at this point, this is 1999, the end of 99, and I didn't have any infertility issues. I didn't have anybody in my surrounding circle that had infertility issues, so I didn't really think to question what they were talking about. Fast forward, and 9-10 months later, they called me and said, hey, we have a family. Are you still interested? And I said, yes. We went on, did my first journey. It was actually a horrible experience. And I was like, okay, I'm never going to do this again. And then fast forward another 2 years, and again, yet something was just like, there was this ad website called task.org that people would put their information if they were looking for donors or surrogates or wanted to be one. So I decided, I'm just going to go ahead and put my information in. At this stage, now I know it was definitely my faith, and just, I'm not very religious at all, but I definitely have a lot of faith. And so I just was like, okay, maybe this is just God telling me to go ahead and do it. And sure enough, I put my information in there, and then 2 hours, I got 25 different emails from different women saying, we have been looking for Black egg donors for years, and we haven't been able to find one.
Wow.
So I got to then choose who I wanted to work with. And so it, like, instead of my first journey, which was anonymous, these other subsequent journeys were open donations. So I got to know who I was donating for, met, them and all of the things. So I went on to donate a total of 6 times, twice for the same family. And then in 2005, I was started thinking like I wanted to start an agency, an egg donation agency, really for women that were looking for these donors that they can't find. I mean, this was a theme at that point. But then I found out I was pregnant with my youngest son. I was trying to finish my MBA. I was working a full-time job, already married with 3 kids. I'm like, maybe right now it's not the best time to do it. But I started working for a surrogacy agency in creating an egg donor program for them. And then I learned about surrogacy and I was like, oh my God, this is fascinating. I could so do this. I had easy pregnancies. No, I mean, I didn't even get morning sickness with my pregnancies, and I'm definitely not throwing that in anybody's face. It's just, it is what it
jealous.
is. I didn't even
little jealous about that.
Like I would be 6, 7 months pregnant and no one even knew that I was pregnant. So yes, I definitely was blessed in that area. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to become a surrogate. And my husband was like, no, not quite. So it finally took him a year or so to agree. He really had to get educated on the process for him to say yes. And then I went on to be a surrogate with my first couple. And it was the first couple that I carried for that actually encouraged me to start a surrogacy and egg donation agency. And so, unbeknownst to me at the time, but I was the first surrogacy and egg donation agency in the state of Georgia. But then I also was the first Black-owned surrogacy and egg donation agency in the country. Wow. And this I started at that point in 2008. So I have been around for a long time.
So a couple of questions came to my mind, and I'm sure you get this question a lot because I actually can remember, I'm going to be vulnerable here. I can remember in college, my girlfriend and I, we saw that you could donate eggs, but of course we were college kids. So in our mind, we were like egg donation for the money because we were poor college kids. So we're like, oh, wow, that's cool. You could do that. We did not do it, but I think it's so incredible and so needed, but I can't help myself to think that, like, do you ever wonder about those children? I mean, that's a question that comes to my mind of like, if I donated my eggs, would I think that like the bond happens as you're growing the child, right? And as you birth the child and you're with the child, but like the egg out there, would I wonder if that I had a child out there? Would I look and see somebody out there, and think? I'm sure that's got to be a challenge to some people that are like thinking about doing that. Am I accurate in saying that comes to mind a lot for people? Or
absolutely, 100%, as it should. Egg donation is not for just anybody. Just because you see a dollar sign does not mean that you should be an egg donor. Right. You really have to really want to do it for the right reasons. The right reasons, knowing that you're impacting somebody else's life, you're helping somebody else have a child, all of the things. And yes, you will have a child that is biologically related to you out in the world. For me, the reason why I was okay with it was one reason actually in particular. So when I gave my cousin a kidney, we were in the hospital and obviously, he was recovering faster than I was. So he came into the room that I was in, and I was sitting in a chair, and he was standing up, and he looked at me, and he was like, guess what? And he was just very goofy and all of the things, and he was a trickster. So I'm just like, oh, Lord, okay, well, what is he about to, I'm laying in this bed, like, what? And he was like, I got to pee I got to pee as a man for the first time. I was like, okay. He's like, you did that for me. The impact of what he said to me that day didn't hit me that day. Unfortunately, he passed away 6 weeks later from E. coli poisoning, actually from the hospital. But that impact of his words hit me a couple years later, of me realizing Yeah. One person can literally change the trajectory of somebody else's life.
Mm.
And so when I decided to be an egg donor, that was what was actually running through my mind, that impact, because it was a feeling that I have never experienced in my life. And knowing that I was the one who did that, it was kind of like this feeling that I was chasing for. And I chased it with my first donation and I didn't get it because it was actually not the greatest experience. So that's why I was like, okay, yeah, I'm never going to do that again. And
Mhm.
at that point too, when I did my donations, I already had my 3 children. So I was already a mom. I already knew the things and I understood what I was actually doing. This wasn't I'm a college student and
Right.
I'm going to just make this decision because of a dollar sign.
Mhm.
Mine was so much deeper than that. And it was also, again, with surrounding around my faith. And I feel wholeheartedly that we are all put on this earth for a purpose and a time, and we each have a purpose that we are to serve. And for me, that this is my purpose. This is what I was created to do. And so when someone comes to me and they're like, I'm interested in being a donor, it's not just you fill out an application and then we see if you're qualified with blood work and then we move forward. Why? You need to tell me why. And don't chat GBT the words and give it to me because we're going to go off script. And I'm going to ask you questions that you're not going to be able to find using AI or, the whole thing of what people think that they're going to say, because I really need to know that you truly understand that your children one day are going to have a biological sibling out there somewhere. How do you truly feel about that? And how will your children feel about that? And for me, I never hid my story from my children. Obviously, my husband knew, my family knew. And with my subsequent donations that I was open, I've met my egg donor babies. They've met
Mm.
my husband. They've met my children. They've met my mom.
Wow.
Because again, for me, it was never something that I was hiding. I was
Right.
proud of what I was doing. I was proud and still am proud of the fact that I was able to impact somebody else's life for them to be able to create a legacy.
That's really powerful. I mean, I think that was really beautiful, Eloise. I mean, I think the phrase that came to my mind right away was, we're never meant to do anything alone. We're meant to do it as a tribe, right? And I feel like you right there just defined that, is that, there are people in this world that need help in different ways. And if we can selflessly help impact them, that is huge. I used to think about that with lactation. Like when I nursed my last one, I remember thinking, I understand why people would just put another baby to their chest and feed them because they're hungry. I would do that as well. I understand that now. And I think obviously yours is a much bigger choice and a much bigger impact, but I think that that's just so beautiful. And I love that you ask people the why, because it's
Mm-hmm.
true, as we know, there's so much psychological components to anything when it comes to motherhood or having a family. And then the fact, like you just said, you have children out there, or your children will now have siblings out there. And how will that make you feel? How do you think that will impact them? I think that's huge. And I love that you ask those questions, because those don't always come to people's mind, that, wow, this is going to not only impact these people in a really great way, it's also going to impact me. And I can take that, as if I know the information, I can take that and impact myself in a really great way.
Mm-hmm.
But if I don't think about it, it could impact me negatively because I didn't put the thought behind that. I love that your children have met them, and your husband and your mom. I think that that just makes the whole picture even more beautiful.
It's also the narrative that you tell yourself, you tell
Mm.
other people, because unfortunately, we tend to want to listen to a lot of outside noise.
Mm-hmm.
And you really have to be confident within yourself to listen to what you are telling yourself and what your own heart is telling you, right? And for me, it was that because I knew that I was doing this, I didn't ever want to hide it from my children because it was, again, not something that I was embarrassed about.
Right.
It's like, this is one of the most beautiful things that I can do. Why should I be embarrassed?
Right.
Why should I not want to tell my children, like, hey, this is what I've done because these people were in need? And especially now with things like Ancestry.com and, well, not 23andMe anymore, but others that are going to come and follow.
Right. Right.
You are going to, there is no such thing as anonymity anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then you hear all these stories about how, these children who had sperm donors or they were donor conceived and now they're just now finding out and they're 30 years old or 40 years old and they, all of these stories. And it's just like, we don't have to create that narrative.
Mm-hmm.
It's society that needs to change. And we also need to change as we're part of society in how we share that narrative.
Yeah. Flipping the script.
Yeah.
So with that, when you have clients come to you who are going to be accepting the donation, is there a conversation talked about of like not hiding it? Obviously they're parents and, they get to decide what they do, but I just mean like, is that a conversation that comes up of like, this should be a story you tell your child and not hide it from them? And, I would assume then there's a whole nother emotional bag there for parents of like doing that. So can you kind of walk me through somebody who would be coming to you for wanting the fertility aspect and kind of like the process of that?
Absolutely. So yes, 100%. We have those conversations of, this is not just your story. You're not just deciding to be a parent and you're going to bring this child in the world, because we need to remember our children are only children for a certain time frame.
Mm-hmm.
They're adults longer than they are children. And we need to make sure that they know their whole story. And that is part of their story. And why are you hiding their story? You shouldn't be embarrassed. Then it's going to give them a complex. Well, if that part is hidden and that part shouldn't be shared and that part was private, well, then is the other parts of my life private? Or am I really worthy? Do I really have the value? Like all of the things that could portray. When in the beginning, from the start, if you share their story and you normalize it, it is normal to them. It is not something that is going to be an embarrassment. It's not going to be something that they're going to be ashamed of. Normalize it. You normalize it because you're the one who is training up your child, not somebody else.
Yes. So then you talk about that. I'm coming to you, Eloise. I'm saying that I need, my husband and I, we've struggled with infertility. We are looking at the next step, the next process. How does somebody go about that? Or how does somebody go about finding this services? Because you talked about, a huge thing was that you didn't even know that it existed at first until you read the newspaper. And then you didn't have a good experience. And then, you ended up opening the first one in Georgia and the first Black-owned one in the country. How do people even think that this is something for them or this could be the next best step? I know we kind of have maybe alluded a little bit to that, but I just think of so many of my patients who, they've tried IUI, they've had failed IVF, they think of adoption right away. I don't know if everybody thinks of like surrogacy or egg donation. What would be your advice, or what's like some of the common misconceptions or things in this process that you would say?
So the thing about third-party reproduction, it's not necessarily the first choice. And especially surrogacy, that should be your last resort. It shouldn't be your first resort. Or I've been trying for 30 days. I can't get pregnant. Let me go work with a surrogate.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to work with a surrogate, you have to have embryos. So if you are dealing with infertility and you're going through the process and you've done IUI or you've done IVF and it's not successful, well, you first have to ask why.
Right.
Is the issue that you can't carry? Is the issue the embryo quality? Is the issue your husband and not you? Because we always assume that the problem is the woman when it's 50% male factor infertility. And these fertility clinics love to start the screening on the women first before they go to the husbands, because oftentimes it is more money for them in their pocket. A male's screening is a couple $100, $1,000 at best. A woman's screening is thousands of dollars, right? When let's start with him first. Let's see if the issue is with him, because now we're only spending a couple $100. And oftentimes it is. So I'm asking these questions of, okay, well, how did you determine that you needed an egg donor or you need a surrogate? Did your physician say that? What are they actually telling you? Are they saying the IVF is not successful because of what? Do you have PCOS? Do you have endometriosis? Do you have unexplained fertility? Have you gone for a second opinion? Because just because that first doctor said it's this, doctors are practicing physicians for a reason. It's called practicing. Everybody is a practice. And nobody is textbook. So just because this doctor said something, okay, I'm going to, yes, give weight to what you said, but I'm also going to go and see if I can find a second opinion and get somebody else's perspective. Is there more testing? Is there more different things? If there's different perspectives that I can get, is there something more natural? Is it my diet? Is it the food that I'm eating? Is it the medications that I'm taking? You have to look at it holistically, not just one piece of the puzzle, because our bodies is not just one piece. And fertility is not one piece. It's not just, I want to have a baby. Right. Fertility affects you emotionally, physically, financially, spiritually, relationally. If it affects your career, it affects every single facet of your life, but yet we like to silo it into one thing. And it's just like, no. So when somebody comes to me, we're asking them all of those questions, and oftentimes they're getting referred by their fertility clinic. The great thing now is there are hundreds of agencies across the country. You don't necessarily need to work with the agency that's local to you, because you can work with any agency anywhere. But there are hundreds of agencies, and there are hundreds of fertility clinics. And just because that local clinic down the street from you is there and they're local does not mean that they are suitable to handle your medical situation. You may have to travel to go to another specialist, because that specialist really works with women with fibroids and knows how to work the situation in order to be able to get you to create the embryos or to even carry the pregnancy to term. So there's a lot that goes into it. It's not just it's this step and then this step and then this step. It's about doing research. And that, as you had alluded to earlier, I run Family Inceptions and Fertility 360. And Fertility 360 was started a couple years ago because we kept getting individuals that would say, it's great that you're here at the end, but why didn't anybody tell me any of this stuff in the beginning? So that I didn't have to go to my last resort? Why wasn't anybody teaching me these things in my 20s and my 30s about the importance of tracking my period and the importance of, I was on birth control for 20 years and now I'm trying to get pregnant, and know that if you've been on birth control for 20 years, your body has been suppressing for so long, you have to give your body time to recover. And it could take even a year from when you stop taking birth control to when you finally get pregnant. And maybe you will need intervention. We don't know those things. But nobody is educating us. They teach us about sex ed, well, halfway anyway, sex education. They don't teach you about reproductive health.
I mean, I think about that's some of my biggest like soapbox that I like to talk about, Eloise, is one, the sex ed we get is really half-ass. And usually it's you have sex, you'll get pregnant, you have sex, you'll get an STI, you have sex, you'll die, right?
Yep.
There's never any real conversation. But take away the sex aspect, the reproductive health. I mean, I just think it is so eye-opening that now we're really talking about the phases of the cycle to females, right? Why weren't we talked about that in, growing up and through our puberty classes and through, every stage that we're going through? Why isn't that talked about? And why do we as a society make it seem like it's so easy to conceive a child when we know that it's not, right? We only have the shortest window to conceive a child. And the other thing is the birth control, right? So there is this huge prevalence of individuals I feel like in my generation, the millennials, that are really struggling with infertility, and we're blaming the birth control. Now, I'm sure there's a ton of research out there, but something I always tell my patients is, besides what the birth control may be made of or which one you took, we have to look at the fact that it suppressed what our body was naturally supposed to be doing for so long, right? So take away what is even in the drug. I just look at that we suppressed our body from having a cycle. And if we go back all the way to our ancestors, I mean, we're suppressing it during the times that truly were childbearing at that time, right? People were having children so young. And so if you think of the development, we just basically shut it off during that. And now obviously you're seeing this, people having children older and older and deciding later and coming off birth control. And then you're right. They're like, well, how come I can't get pregnant? What's happening? And it's not really talked about, where I feel like that education needs to happen of, it may take a long time or take up to a year for that just to come out of your body. I feel like it's still told that I have so many patients that will say, well, I thought the most fertile I was the month I stopped, the month after stopping my birth control. And I'm like, I would really like to see the research on that your provider's saying, because I feel like maybe it shoots up hormones, but to me, it's really that your body's got to figure a whole lot out, right? It's got to figure out a whole lot. Now, another thing, I love that you also talked about the holistic aspect, because that's something we talk about in pelvic floor, is that we have to look at the individual in all aspects, because all of it plays a role. Now, with pelvic floor therapy, I really am very sensitive of talking about fertility, just because fertility is a very sensitive subject. So I never want to say that my services are going to guarantee that you're going to get pregnant. Now, what I do like to talk about is that we know that the body can stay in fight or flight. And if our body stays in fight or flight, I think that then if it's only trying to survive us, how is it going to prepare our body to reproduce another child, right? So I do like to talk to people about, that aspect of that. We have to regulate our nervous system. We have to look at that psychosocial component that you talked about. I think those are all huge things when it comes to making sure we're preparing our body, making sure we understand all the factors that have to do with fertility in all aspects of our life, because it's huge and it's very important, which I think is, I love that, there could be clinics out there that are in for what you're doing for the money, instead of knowing that like, this is a family, this is like choices. We have to talk about all these other things. I also love that you talked about that you might have one down the street and they're not for you, right? Something I always say is no provider is everybody's cup of tea. And if they say they are, run, because they're not, right? I know I don't have, I'm not every client's ideal therapist, and that's okay. Right. And you have to say that, because they're not everybody's my ideal client. And we have to make sure that they can trust us. They understand the process. They're getting what they need out of it. And if they just go with the person that's down the road, that might not be the best fit. And so I love that you talked about that. You may have to travel, or there's lots to look at now, which is great that there's more places out there. So you don't feel you only have one option or a couple options. So I think that's really big. Off of that, this is obviously very heavy work that you do in a very beautiful way, but very probably hard, right? And tolling on your mind and your body. I always think of like, what we do is like, it's very heavy. It's rewarding, but heavy. How do you feel like for you, a very high achieving, successful female who's gone through the process, is trying to create this process and help other families in a great way? What have you done for you, or what have you figured out along the way that you didn't necessarily plan for or think of, that now you've had to put things in place, if that kind of makes sense?
So my priority is my faith, my family, my team, then my business. And I put my team before my business because without my team, I wouldn't have my business.
Right.
But my faith is number one. And I'm just a very direct person. I've always kind of been that way. But they always say, I don't know if you've ever heard the saying about the fuck you 50s.
No, but I want to.
Well, let me tell you, I had it before I was 50. It's now even worse. I don't yell. I don't scream. I don't, call people out names or whatever. But I am very to the point and very direct. And I don't sugarcoat anything. Because I've gotten to a place in my life now where your thought or perspective of me is none of my business. That's on you. That has nothing to do with me. As is, my thought or perspective of you is none of your business. That's on me. And I take care of my peace. And for me, it is, again, being in where I journal, I pray, I read the Bible every single day. And I've also cut out all media. I don't do TV. I don't watch movies. I don't binge anything. I sure as shit don't watch the news. I don't even do social media. I have social media because obviously it's required, but I have a team behind my social media. That is not me on there doing all of the things, because that is one of the ways that I protect my peace. And my comfortability and my peace is of the utmost importance to me. And if you are going to come into my space, if I allow you to come into my space, and that's what we miss. We allow people into our space, just as we can move people out of our space. And I'm not just talking about general people, family too. Because I'll be quick to tell family in a blink of an eye, like, nope, that's not going to happen. So for me, again, I was doing this before, but now it's even more so, I would say, because and I've been doing this now for 17 years. I've been running my agency 17 years. I have been in the fertility space for 25 years. And the burden of what it was to carry the load of people's stories, of people's horrors, of people's heartbreak, of people losing children. I used to carry it on my shoulders. I was having hair loss. My weight would fluctuate. I wouldn't be able to sleep. I had like all kinds of stuff. And it had got to a point where, I was going to counseling. I did all of the things. And, and it was my counselor who was like, you get to control all of this, right? I'm like, what do you mean? And this, and this, and this, and and she was like, yeah. And these are all of the things that are happening to you because you are allowing it to happen to you. And I'm like, but I can't control this. And she was like, but you can. You can control it because you're giving them authority over your space.
Mm.
Stop giving them authority in your mind, because that's where it starts, is your mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you keep thinking it's on the physical thing. It's not physical. It is in your thoughts. It is in your mind. You have to start there first. And if you don't, you're not going to have the peace, regardless of what you do. I don't take medications. I'm not on anything. I'm not on anxiety meds. I'm not, nothing. I take absolutely nothing, because I have learned, and it's not something that happened overnight. This is years in the making, but I have learned that I'm not going to give you my peace. I'm not going to give you my headspace. I'm not going to give you thought in my mind, because I get to control that. And so I am going to cut out anything that is going to cause me any kind of angst, any kind of frustration, anything. And if I can't, because I need you for something, then I am going to come to you and say, here is the problem, and either you fix it, or you're going to be removed out of my space, period.
Mm. What I love about that is we forget so much how the mental health really affects the physical health, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I could go on a real long tangent about the stigma that people talk about mental health. But I always try to tell everybody, we all have mental health.
Yes.
It's just, how is our mental health, right?
Yes.
Just like we all have physical health. We all have physical health, and there's things that we need to work on. There's some things that we're doing really great in, same with our mental health. But our mental health directly impacts our physical health.
Yeah.
And I love that you said, I mean, you were told, like, you're allowing it. And it's so true. I mean, I know that we both heard a speaker talk about, stress is a choice. And how
Yes.
many people I've mentioned to that afterwards is like, no. And I'm like, but it is, right? Because it's how we react and how we allow ourselves to move through the process after something has made our body stressed out or our mind stressed out. We are in control of our reactions. And I think that just plays a role in so much, which then leads back to, if our mental health is leaving us physically, like our nervous system is high, or we're not taking care of ourselves, or we're not looking at everything, that directly impacts infertility.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And directly impacts how our body wants to carry. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not other challenges out there where individuals truly have tried all those things. Obviously, we know that. That is why you have your business. There are people that need other things, but starting with that, I think, is huge. And I have seen, and you're starting to see more people talk about that, right? There's the Let Them book, the Hype Woman book. Those books are out there by these different authors, really kind of talking about protect your space, protect your peace, right?
Yes.
Like, you deserve that. So I think that's huge.
And really quickly, to your point, when you're talking about fertility, even if you do need to work with a surrogate or an egg donor, or you have to go through fertility clinic or whatever the case might be, you still have to be mentally prepared for that.
Mm-hmm.
This is not something you're just going to be able to jump into and expect that it's going to happen. The average time that it takes for somebody to get pregnant is at minimum 2 rounds of IVF average. Now, and if you have other problems, if you have other medical issues, if you have all the things, if you have issues with your weight, if you have issues with, if you're a smoker, and I'm not just talking about cigarettes, if you use any form of marijuana, causes issues with fertility. And people are just like, it's a gummy and helps me relax. It's, mild, whatever. Actually, there is now studies that show that there is a correlation of why people can't get pregnant, and not just on the female side, male side too. So it's all of those things. And even if, again, you need to go down the rabbit hole of third party, you still have to be mentally prepared, because there's going to be an emotional roller coaster that you're going to have to go through. So your mindset is everything. And I didn't change and switch until I learned about my mindset, and until I learned about I have the power to allow people in my space or not. I have the power to allow what I intake into me, whether it's from a movie, whether it's the anxiety that just watching the news causes. Like, you don't pay attention. You're just thinking you're watching the news. But over time, it builds up. And so I literally cut off the TV in 2016 and I haven't turned it back on since.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, Eloise, before we close up, is there anything that I missed that you really wish that I would have asked or you could have talked about? You gave us so much information. I just want to make sure that you got to share everything that you felt like you wanted to be able to share. So you gave so much perspective and I think such a great glimpse into this journey that people can look into, be it that they need the services or they are a donor as well. Was there anything that I missed asking you, Eloise?
It's not just a donor or a surrogate. If they want to also be a surrogate, because there's definitely a need for that too. But ultimately, it really comes down to do your research. And the problem too is now there's so much information out there. You don't actually know which is really factual and what's not factual and what is really going to be in it for me and all of the things. I mean, but the beauty of it is that there is a lot of experts and there is always somebody out there for you. And so you just need to make sure that you're looking for that right person. Don't settle, but you're looking for that right person that is going to meet the needs that you have and is going to be able to help you throughout the process. But before you reach out to anybody, you need to check yourself to make sure that you are prepared for whatever roller coaster. And unfortunately, going down the fertility hole is a roller coaster, but being kind of preparing yourself mentally that this is going to be a roller coaster. I'm eventually going to be able to get off the roller coaster. But if I want to have a child and this is the way I have to go about it, I just have to be prepared to hold on and just keep moving forward until I get to my end goal.
And you allow the people into your space that you need. Right?
That is 100%.
Yes. Eloise, thank you so much. I love how you brought the compassion and the truth behind something that we often think is so clinical or transactional. You remind us that family, however it's built, begins with intention, care, and mindset. For anyone wanting to learn more, you can find Eloise at familyinceptions.com, fertility360.com, or tune into her podcast. I believe we just have a season dropping soon or just dropped, Eloise.
It just dropped on
Amazing.
Tuesday, season 7, Fertility Cafe podcast. Yeah.
Season 7. So tune into that. Thank you so much for joining me, Eloise, on Vaginally Speaking and helping us learn even more about this process and solidifying that there's more information that needs to be set out there. There's more stuff that we should be talking about and bringing these conversations to the surface so that it's not taboo to talk about. So thank you very much, Eloise. And as always, listeners, love and lube. Thank you for tuning in. And please pass this on to a friend that you feel may need to hear this.